Ambassador Lee Hanna walked through the long corridor toward the Galactic Council chamber. Her black uniform felt heavy on her shoulders, not from its weight, but from what it represented. Today, she would speak for all humanity before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The corridor walls glowed with soft blue light, and strange symbols moved across them like living things. These symbols told the history of the Council. 10,000 years of peace and order across millions of worlds. Hannah had studied this history for months, learning about each species and their place in the galactic hierarchy. 2 alien guards stood beside the massive doors at the end of the corridor. They were Veltheri, tall creatures with 6 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. Their 4 eyes tracked her movement as she approached, but they said nothing. The doors opened with a deep rumbling sound that seemed to shake the floor beneath her feet. The chamber beyond took Hannah's breath away. It was enormous, bigger than any building on Earth. The curved walls stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. 12 raised platforms surrounded a small area in the center, where a single chair waited for her. On each platform sat representatives of the species that ruled the galaxy. Hannah recognized them from her studies. The Zephyrians looked like living crystals that caught and bent light in beautiful patterns. The Mantic Collective resembled giant insects with clicking mouths that never stopped moving. The Drift Collective were beings made of glowing gas that floated in clear containers filled with their home atmosphere. Each species was ancient, powerful, and had controlled vast territories for thousands of years. She walked to the center chair, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Hundreds of other aliens filled smaller seats around the chamber. Diplomats, observers, and representatives from lesser species. All eyes were on her as she sat down. The Zephyrian speaker rose from its platform. When it moved, light danced across its crystalline body in waves of color. When it spoke, its voice sounded like distant bells ringing in harmony. Human Representative Lee Hanna, the speaker said, "You appear before the Galactic Council to answer for your species' actions. In the past 10 years, your people have established colonies in 17 star systems without requesting permission from this council." Hannah kept her face calm, though her heart was beating fast. This was exactly what they had expected. Earth's rapid expansion had worried the council members who were used to controlling when and where new species could grow. Furthermore, the speaker continued, your species develops new technology at a rate that concerns us. In less than 100 years, you have gone from primitive chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. This rapid advancement suggests dangerous ambition. Around the chamber, other council members made sounds of agreement. The Mantic Collective's clicking grew louder and faster. The Void Swimmers released clouds of yellow gas that their translators said meant caution and threat. Your people also showed troubling independence, added the representative of the Quantum Collective, its electromagnetic field pulsing with different colors. When we sent diplomatic missions to your worlds, your leaders asked too many questions. They wanted to know why they needed our permission to explore empty space. This attitude is problematic. Hannah listened without interrupting, just as she had been trained. Every human diplomat learned that the Council expected respect and obedience from younger species. For 10,000 years, new civilizations had accepted their place in the galactic hierarchy without question. The speaker's body shifted to a deep red color as it prepared to deliver the Council's decision. Therefore, humanity will accept the following terms. First, you will immediately stop all expansion beyond your birth system. Second, you will abandon your 3 newest colonies and return those worlds to Council oversight. Third, you will accept junior membership status in our organization with limited voting rights and no authority over territorial matters. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of translation, devices working to convert the speaker's words into languages that hundreds of different species could understand. Additionally, the speaker continued, humanity will submit to Council oversight in all matters involving new technology development. You will share all scientific advances with Council researchers before implementing them. Council advisors will be stationed on your primary worlds to ensure compliance with these terms. Hannah felt the weight of billions of human lives resting on her response. Back on Earth, families were raising children and dreaming of the stars. On Mars and the outer colonies, Pioneers were building new homes and new lives. All of that would end if she accepted these terms. She looked around the chamber, meeting the alien gazes that studied her from every direction. Some showed curiosity. Others displayed the confidence of predators who had cornered their prey. The council members had clearly expected this to be a simple matter, present their demands and watch another young species bow their heads in submission. But as Hannah prepared to respond, something in her expression made several council members shift uncomfortably on their platforms. The human woman was not showing the fear and resignation they were used to seeing. "I understand the council's position," Hannah said finally, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced sound systems. "May I respond to these terms?" Ambassador Lee Hannah stood slowly from her chair, her movements deliberate and calm. The massive chamber watched her every gesture as she clasped her hands behind her back, a human posture that looked strange and somehow threatening to the alien observers. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I have listened carefully to your concerns. However, I must respectfully disagree with both your facts and your conclusions." A wave of surprised sounds rippled through the chamber. The Velthari delegation began rapid hand signals to each other, while the quantum collective's probability displays flickered with new calculations. No species had ever disagreed with the Council so directly. Hannah reached into her diplomatic case and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and holographic displays appeared around her, showing legal documents and star charts that floated in the air like glowing ghosts. "You claim our expansion violates galactic law," she said, pointing to one of the displays. "However, Galactic Law Code 127.4, established in Council Year 4847, clearly states that any intelligent species may expand into unoccupied systems. All 17 of our colonies were built in empty space, with no existing claims." The Zephyrian speaker's crystalline body shifted colors rapidly. Something Hannah had learned meant confusion or distress. The other council members began making agitated noises as they realized the human had studied their own laws more carefully than they expected. "You also speak of dangerous expansion rates," Hannah continued, her tone remaining perfectly polite even as her words cut deep. "This is interesting, considering the historical records I have here." New holograms appeared, showing conquest maps and timeline data. The Velthari conquered 47 systems in their first century of space travel. The Drift Collective absorbed an entire small galaxy during their expansion phase. The Manid Collective eliminated 6 competing species to claim their territory. The chamber erupted in angry clicks, buzzes, and electromagnetic pulses. Several species tried to speak at once, but Hannah's voice cut through the chaos. "And the Zephyrians," she said, looking directly at the speaker, "destroyed the homeworlds of 3 rival species during their rise to power. Their own records call it necessary territorial consolidation." The speaker's body turned a dark, angry red. Those actions were taken in different times, under different circumstances. The galaxy was not yet unified under proper authority. Proper authority? Hannah smiled, an expression that somehow looked predatory despite her calm demeanor. "You mean your authority. How convenient that the rules changed once you were the ones in power." She gestured to another holographic display, showing technological advancement charts. "As for our dangerous development speed, I find it curious that species who took thousands of years to achieve faster-than-light travel will be worried about a species that did it in decades. Perhaps the concern is not that our progress is dangerous, but that it is efficient." The word efficient seemed to hang in the air like a threat. The council members had built their power on the assumption that technological advancement was slow and predictable. A species that could innovate rapidly was a species that might not need their guidance. "You claim we show troubling independence," Hannah continued, her voice growing softer, so the vast chamber had to strain to hear her. "We ask too many questions. We want to know why we need permission to explore empty space. But I wonder, when did curiosity become a crime? When did asking why become treason?" She walked closer to the council platforms, her footsteps echoing in the tense silence. "For 10,000 years, you have maintained order through a simple system. New species appear, You intimidate them into submission, and they accept their place at the bottom of your hierarchy. You offer protection from threats that you control, trade agreements that favor your established members, and the promise that someday, if they are very good and very obedient, they might earn a slightly better position in your system. The Mandate Collective's clicking grew so rapid it sounded like static. The Void Swimmers released clouds of acidic yellow gas that their translators marked as extreme agitation. "But here's what I think really concerns you," Hannah said, her voice now carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You are not afraid of human expansion or human technology. You are afraid of human ideas." She gestured to the holographic displays around her. Every species in this chamber earned their position through conquest, intimidation, or inheritance. You rule because your ancestors were strong enough to take power and smart enough to keep it. But you have never had to justify why you deserve to rule. The Zephyrian speaker's voice rang with harmonics of barely controlled fury. "The Council's authority needs no justification. We have brought peace and stability to the galaxy for millennia. Have you?" Hannah asked quietly. "Or have you simply made resistance impossible? There is a difference between peace and the silence of the oppressed." She returned to her chair, but did not sit down. Instead, she gathered her materials with careful precision, placing each hologram generator and datapad back in her case. "Which brings me to your final demand," she said, looking up at the assembled representatives. "You want humanity to submit to Council oversight, to accept junior status, to ask permission before we reach for the stars." Hannah closed her case with a soft click that seemed unnaturally loud in the vast space. "No." The single word "no" hung in the air like a physical presence. In 10,000 years of Galactic Council history, no species had ever given such a simple, direct refusal to their demands. The vast chamber seemed to hold its breath as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian speaker's crystalline form flickered through a spectrum of colors before settling on deep, angry red. "Human representative, you cannot simply refuse the Council's authority. Every civilized species in the galaxy recognizes our jurisdiction." "Then perhaps," Hannah replied calmly, "it is time for that to change." The chamber exploded into chaos. The Mandate Collective began screeching in their bioacoustic language, a sound like metal being torn apart. The Velthari delegates struck their platforms with all 6 arms, creating a thunderous drumbeat that echoed off the curved walls. The Drift Collective's gas clouds turned violent orange and began swirling in agitated patterns. Other species throughout the chamber added their own sounds of outrage. Electromagnetic squeals from the Quantum Collective mixed with the deep bass rumbles of the Stonewalkers. Translation devices overloaded trying to process dozens of languages, expressing shock, anger, and disbelief all at once. The speaker raised all 6 of its crystalline arms in the ancient gesture for order. The motion was so formal and ceremonial that even the most agitated species gradually fell silent. Only the soft humming of environmental systems could be heard in enormous space. "Humanly, Hannah," the speaker said, its voice now carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "Your words approach sedition. The Council's authority is not a matter for discussion. It is the foundation upon which galactic civilization stands." Hannah looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes and sensors with steady composure. "Then perhaps galactic civilization needs a new foundation. One built on cooperation instead of domination. One where species choose their path instead of having it chosen for them." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the chamber's background system seemed to quiet, as if the station itself was listening. The speaker's form began to pulse with deeper shades of red. "The Council votes on immediate sanctions against the human species. Military enforcement fleets will ensure compliance with our directives. All those in favor." 11 different appendages, energy fields, and alien limbs rose in unison. Claws, tentacles, crystalline arms, and electromagnetic signatures all gave their consent. Only the human representative abstained. Hannah nodded, as if she had expected this outcome. She began gathering her remaining materials with methodical precision, placing each item in her diplomatic case with movements that seemed to echo strangely in the vast chamber. "The human species formally rejects your authority," she said without looking up from her packing. "We withdraw from all treaties, agreements, and protocols with the Galactic Council effective immediately." We do not recognize your sanctions or your enforcement actions. She closed her case and began walking toward the massive doors at the chamber's entrance. Her footsteps were the only sound in the stunned silence that followed her declaration. The Mandate Collective senior delegate found its voice first, screeching in its native language. You cannot simply leave. No species has ever walked away from a council. It is impossible. No species has ever tried. Hannah replied without stopping or turning around. You have ruled through fear for so long that you forgot some beings can choose not to be afraid. She reached the doors and placed her hand on the biometric scanner. The ancient security system, designed to respond to any sapient life form, recognized her identity and began the slow unlocking process. Massive mechanisms that had sealed the chamber for countless diplomatic sessions began to turn. Human, you make a terrible mistake, the Zephyrian speaker called after her, its voice now carrying what might have been desperation. Your species cannot survive alone in the galaxy. You need the Council protection, our trade networks, our established systems of order. Hannah paused at the threshold. The doors were open behind her, revealing the corridor beyond. But she turned back to face the Council one final time. No, she said with absolute certainty, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You need us more than we need you. You just have not realized it yet. That is absurd. The Veltheri delegate clicked rapidly. Humanity is one small species with a handful of worlds. We represent thousands of civilizations across millions of systems. Do you? Hannah asked. Or do you represent a fear that keeps those civilizations from choosing their own path? She gestured toward the observer galleries where hundreds of representatives from minor species sat in silence. How many of them are here because they want to be? How many chose their allegiance freely? And how many simply had no other option? Several of the observers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few exchanged glances that did not go unnoticed by the council members. When word spreads that someone finally said no to you and survived, how many others will find the courage to make the same choice? The doors finished opening with a sound like thunder. Beyond them lay the corridor that would take her away from the council chamber, away from the established order, away from 10,000 years of tradition. Goodbye, Hannah said simply. She walked through the doorway and did not look back. The doors sealed behind her with a resonant boom that seemed to mark the end of an age. 3 hours after Ambassador Lee Hannah walked away from the Galactic Council, emergency alarms were ringing across the galaxy. In the crystal cities of Zephyr Prime, the ruling council gathered in chambers that had not been used since the Great Wars millennia ago. On the hive world of the Mandate Collective, billions of insect minds buzzed with shared anxiety that could be felt from orbit. Captain Kim June floated in the zero-gravity command center of his stealth ship, watching the panic unfold on his screens. The human vessel Silent Runner was hidden in an asteroid field just outside the Council's main system, invisible to their sensors thanks to technology the aliens did not know existed. Captain, his communications officer Lieutenant Park Sue reported, we are picking up massive data transmissions between Council fleets. They are mobilizing everything they have. Kim June pushed himself over to look at the tactical display. Red dots representing Council warships were moving across the star map like angry insects. How many ships? 237 capital ships, sir. Over 600 smaller vessels. They are pulling forces from every corner of the galaxy. June felt his stomach tighten. The human fleet had maybe 20 combat ships total, most of them converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. The numbers were terrifying. Sir, Ensign Choi Min called from her intelligence station. I am detecting something else. The Council is activating deep space monitoring stations that have been sleeping for centuries. They are scanning everything. What kind of everything? Every human ship, every colony, every outpost. But, sir, they are also scanning star systems we have never even visited. It looks like they are trying to map every possible place humanity might go. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, chaos continued to rage. The Zephyrian speaker stood before a massive holographic display, showing their fleet movements, but its crystalline body flickered with colors of distress and confusion. This is madness, declared the Quantum Collective's representative. Its electromagnetic field pulsing with agitated patterns. We are preparing for war against a species with fewer ships than some pirate fleets. A species that walked away from us, clicked the Velthari delegate angrily. No one has ever walked away from the council. If we allow this, if others see that defiance is possible, others are already seeing, interrupted the Void Swimmer's representative, releasing clouds of sick yellow gas that translated as pure fear. My intelligence networks report that 17 minor species have requested meetings with human diplomats in the past 4 hours. 17. The speaker's form shifted through rapid color changes as it accessed ancient files deep in its memory cores. These were psychological profiles of species that had defied the Council in the past. Every single one had been crushed within months of their rebellion, but those species had tried to hide, to negotiate, to find some compromise that would let them survive. They had acted like prey animals trying to escape a predator. The humans had done something completely different. They had simply left. They showed no fear, made no threats, asked for nothing. They just rejected the Council's authority and walked away. Speaker, whispered the Drift Collective's representative in frequencies only the Zephyrian could detect. Our probability engines are showing cascade failure scenarios. If more species follow the human example, if they realize they can simply say no. The speaker did not need the calculation finished. 10,000 years of carefully balanced galactic order could collapse like a house of cards. The entire system control they had built depended on everyone believing there was no alternative. Across the galaxy, that belief was already cracking. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the local administrator was receiving strange messages from species they had never heard of, asking about something called the human example. In the trade stations of the Outer Rim, merchants whispered about ships flying flags that bore no council symbols. On the prison world of Tartarus, 9, where the council kept species that had caused problems, the guards noticed their prisoners talking more quietly than usual. The conversation stopped whenever guards approached, but the mood in the detention centers was changing in ways that made veteran wardens nervous. "Deploy all fleets," the speaker commanded, its voice ringing with desperate authority. "Find every human ship, every human colony, every human outpost. Show the galaxy what happens when someone defies the Council." The Mantic Collective's war leader clicked rapidly. "What are our rules of engagement? Speaker? Do we demand surrender first, or—" "There will be no surrender offered," the speaker replied, its colors now a solid, angry red. "Humanity chose to reject our mercy. They will serve as an example to any other species that might consider following their path." But even as the massive war fleets began moving toward human space, reports continued to flow and that made the Council members increasingly nervous. Intelligence suggested that humanity had been preparing for this moment for months, maybe years. Hidden shipyards had been discovered in remote asteroid fields. Several minor species were openly declaring support for human independence. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to have been sharing their technology with other species. Weapons designs, ship modifications, communication systems, all flowing freely to anyone willing to stand against Council authority. The galaxy that had been stable for 10,000 years was changing, and no one knew how to stop it. 6 months after Ambassador Lee Hanna walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, Admiral Lee Tay stood on the bridge of humanity's newest warship, the Freedom's Dawn. Through the massive viewing window, he watched as another former Council member signed the documents that would make them part of the Terran Compact. The Velthari delegation, once proud enforcers of Council rule, now signed their names with hands that shook slightly. Their home world had been freed from Council control just 3 weeks ago when their own people rose up in support of human-backed independence movements. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "that brings our membership to 47 species, including 8 former Council members. Only 4 of the original Council species remain in their alliance." Tay nodded, remembering the desperate battles that had brought them to this moment. The Council's war fleets had been enormous but predictable, using the same tactics they had relied on for thousands of years. Humanity's allies, those minor species the Council had ignored, fought with the fury of people who finally saw hope for freedom. The turning point had come at the Battle of Kepler 442b. The human fleet, outnumbered 10-1, had defeated the Council's Grand Armada using new tactics no one had seen before. Small ships working together like a swarm, artificial intelligence that could adapt faster than any organic mind, and weapons that struck from directions the enemy never expected. The surviving Council ships had fled in chaos, their 1,000-year reign of galactic dominance shattered in a single day of fighting. Sir, Commander Yunha approached with a data pad, intelligence reports from the former Council territories. The Zephyrians have sealed their borders completely. The Quantum Collective is asking to negotiate with our diplomats. The Drift Collective is requesting humanitarian aid. Tay almost smiled at that last part. The same species that had voted to destroy humanity now needed human help to keep their basic systems running after all their subject peoples had abandoned them. Through the bridge window, he could see dozens of ships bearing the flags of the Terran Compact. Not just human vessels, but designs from across the galaxy, improved with shared technology and crewed by mixed species working together. The unity the Council had claimed to represent but never achieved was finally becoming real. His sister's voice came through the communication system from her office on the diplomatic station. As Secretary General of the Compact, Hannah now spent her days helping new species transition from Council rule to self-governance. Tay, she said, we just received formal surrender documents from the remaining Council species. They want to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence. What are you going to tell them, sister? Her laugh carried across space with the same warmth he remembered from their childhood on Earth, when they had looked up at the stars and dreamed of flying among them. The same thing I told them 6 months ago, she replied. We are not interested in ruling anyone. We just want to be free to reach for the stars, and we want others to have that same freedom. In the distance, a convoy of colony ships was preparing for departure. These vessels carried volunteers from dozens of species to worlds that had never known intelligent life. Farmers from Earth worked alongside Velthari engineers and Mantid scientists, all united by the dream of building something new. The galaxy that had once been divided between rulers and subjects was becoming something different, a community of equals bound together by choice rather than fear. On his tactical display, Tay could see the new reality taking shape. Where the Council's maps had shown rigid boundaries and controlled territories, the Compact's charts showed open trade routes and freely chosen alliances. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now working together on joint projects. Admiral, his science officer called out, we are receiving a transmission from the edge of our territory. It is from a species we have never encountered before, the Keth Mori from the far spiral arm. They say they have heard about the Terran Compact and want to know if they can join. Tay looked at the star charts showing the vast regions of space still unexplored. The galaxy was far larger than anyone had imagined, with countless species still waiting to be discovered. Under Council rule, first contact had always meant conquest or submission. Now it could mean friendship and cooperation. Tell them they are welcome to send a diplomatic mission, he said. And make sure they understand membership in the Compact is always voluntary, and any species can leave whenever they choose. It was this promise, more than any military victory, that had destroyed the Council's power. The idea that people could choose their own path, that authority came from consent rather than force, spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On distant worlds, species that had submitted to Council rule for centuries were asking themselves a simple question. What if we said no? The answer, as humanity had shown, was freedom. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Terran Compact had begun, built not on fear and domination, but on the revolutionary idea that all thinking beings deserved the right to choose their own destiny among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.